Hello and welcome to Questions for the Chief for July. Hi Chief, I really appreciate your time and attention and willingness to discuss topics that are important to the department and the public. Here at Station 119 we have a community that is very mindful and caring about fire safety, especially the wildland-urban interface. We have an annual Firewise event here at the station every spring. During the last station inspection, it was realized that we are not being a very good example as far as having a defensible space when it comes to urban interface fires. Right before the Firewise event, multiple trees were cut down around the station to comply with our recommendations that we give to the public. The landscaping here was originally designed to blend in with the natural environment. This, however, makes it almost impossible to maintain. The fire station does not look good in my opinion and really is not very wildland-urban interface safe. My suggestion is that we replace the current landscaping with a zero-scape wildland interface friendly design. This would not only be easier for crews to maintain, but could be a resource for the public to view and get their own ideas for how to do their own landscaping. We could even label the vegetation similar to the Red Butte Garden for reference to residents. I believe this could be a great way to reach out to the public and show them that we really practice what we preach. Not only could we use this as a reference for the residents of Immigration Canyon, but also around other areas of the valley. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, well, I've got Zach here to answer it, but before I kick it over to Zach, I just want to say I love the question. I love it. Like, as soon as I read it, I called him and I'm like, how do we make this happen? It's a great idea. There's other fire departments that have done a similar thing, and that is fantastic if we can make this happen, in my mind. It's a UFSA probably project, because it's a capital project, so it would be a UFSA project, but that is coming up, and Zach is going to talk through what that looks like. So,
yeah,
I love the question. Zach's going to take it from here.
I love the question too. This is right up our alley. As soon as I saw this, I knew immediately this was a project that we wanted to take on. It's also a very timely question, like you mentioned. We do have the UFSA, make sure I got that right, UFSA CapEx project wish list that's going to be emailed out to the stations next month. And so we can talk a little bit about that later, but to get back on this question, I really like the idea of the station kind of serving as a model for Firewise landscaping, especially in such a critical area, as Immigration Canyon. I think for the crew to get the ball rolling on this, the first step for them is to reach out to facilities, Captain Park and facilities specifically, and kind of bring him in and discuss a little bit of their concept with them and help, he can kind of help them get the big picture of what that project looks like for us, and then start reaching out to some vendors to get us an idea of what that budget might look like once it's all together. Once that's all together, it can be submitted along with the UFSA CapEx, since it's such good timing, right? When that comes out in August, this project can be submitted for 119, along with anything else that they may have that may be a capital project in that UFSA CapEx process. Once it's submitted, all the projects that are submitted, we'll get probably dozens of them. They'll all be reviewed, prioritized. This one will clearly be one that ends up towards the top for multiple reasons. But a couple of things that we consider when we look at these projects is, number one, is it a capital project? Does it bring that long-term value to the fire station that's necessary for capital? And then, the cost is also a factor in that as well. So if it is a true capital project, we'll include it in the CapEx process for UFSA. It can be incorporated in the 2025 UFSA budget, right? And that budget starts in January. So if it's not a capital project, we'll need to run that through the UFA budget. Now it is not included in the 24-25 UFA budget. So most likely what we'd need to do is probably take maybe the most critical piece of that project, and we could run that through the buildings and grounds GL for UFA. And that'll help us get a portion of the project done, at least maybe the most important piece of it done. And then going forward, we can include it in the 25-26 budget process to get the large project completed overall. So it could take some time if that's the path that it ends up going, but I fingers crossed this will end up in the UFSA project and get going on it a lot sooner. I do want to take a second to kind of circle back a little bit about the UFSA CapEx project. So facilities is going to be sending out that email in August to solicit capital project ideas from all the stations. Once everybody submits all those, they can all be reviewed, but I'd just like to encourage crews right now to start talking, to A, B, and C platoons, come up with some ideas and agree on what you'd like to submit for the stations for your capital projects. So we're talking about, larger scale projects that bring long-term value to the stations. I want to encourage everyone to keep your eyes open for that email. It should be next few weeks here. It'll be in August for sure. And once that email comes out, have your projects ready to be submitted with some cost estimates, and you can reach out to facilities to get some help with that if you need some. But respond to that email with your ideas in a timely fashion. And the critical part of that is the UFSA budget is already in development right now, right? And so we don't want to, once that train pulls out of the station, if it comes in too late, chances of us getting that proposal from your station on there is not great. So the sooner it gets in, the better chance it's got to get on the list and be in one of those priority positions that'll help it get done in the next year.
Okay, just really quickly, Zach, since you brought that up, why don't you talk about Cottonwood Heights, Riverton, Harriman, and Holiday? How do those projects get done because they're not members of UFSA?
Yep. Yeah, so we got some stations that are very unique in that way. Riverton stations, like you mentioned. So Riverton budgets for all their capital projects in their city budget, and there's 3 or 4, I can't remember all of them right off the top of my head, but there's 3 or 4 projects right now for Riverton stations that are in their current budget and things that will be happening there. So if there are capital projects in those stations, capital projects in 110, 116 are another good example. Those are currently owned by Salt Lake County, so we'll have to run those in Salt Lake County budget. So you can still submit your proposals. We can put them in the proper categories. If there's something we need to send to Riverton, we can send it to Riverton for their future budget process. We can get something in front of Salt Lake County for their future budget process and start working some of that stuff in.
Okay, so from the firefighter's perspective, the process is the same. Mm-hmm. Submit them all, and then you guys will go, this is a Harriman, this is a Cottonwood Heights, or Salt Lake County, this is a Riverton, and you'll figure out where they go.
Yeah, and the vast majority are UFSA
Yep.
projects, which is helpful, but yeah, these few will make sure they end up in the right place.
Okay. Cool. Well, just the one point on this question that I want to touch on is it would be, they say that this would be easier for the crews to maintain, being zero-scaped, and I can tell you that that's not true. It's way easier to maintain lawn, but because there's so many more opportunities for weeds and trimming and blah, 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 but just don't get that in your mind that it's going to be easier to maintain, because I can almost guarantee it's not.
Take some work.
Okay, that's
thanks.
it. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chief, this submission has several elements and related questions, all pertaining to the recent study conducted by Sandy City Fire Department. Sandy City Council recently completed a 2024 General Management and Operations Study of the Sandy City Fire Department. The Mayor and Council commissioned what is in essence a report on the health of the Fire Department, operations, staffing, work hours, promotional processes, policies, apparatus, stations, response capabilities, specialized response units, and administrative staffing, among other items. This report was presented to the Sandy City Council on July 9th by Public Consulting Group, LLC. The report is nearly 170 pages in length and appears to be relatively comprehensive. The report also references Unified Fire Authority, among other fire departments, as having participated in the review process, so I surmise that you have a good understanding of what took place in this study. Incidentally, this study of the Sandy City FD took place according to plan and policy, per resolutions 23093 and 2322C. The Sandy City Council committed to conducting departmental management studies every 10 years. The Sandy City Fire Department was scheduled for review in 2024. Within the report, there are many impactful statements and recommendations. Throughout the survey sections in the report, the consultants offered statements and observations that might well apply to UFA just as they apply to Sandy Fire. There are also several recommendations that could seemingly be addressed if the Sandy City Fire Department were to move into or consolidate with the Fire Service Area, or UFA. Of the areas needing improvement, per the consultants, a merger would be a good solution to staffing, training, specialty programs, dispatch, policy, and administrative issues within Sandy City Fire Department. Future consolidation is a highlighted option within the study. Reviews and resultant reports, like what we see coming out of the General Management and Operations study of the Sandy City Fire Department, are a best practice. When considering UFA, a review of this type would be valuable in terms of transparency and getting an objective view of our organization. This type of bottom-up review would also certainly fortify and strengthen the value of a strategic plan and would drive budgets by way of edifying our stakeholders, communities, and board members. The information derived from this type of study would generate a roadmap to success, not unlike the AG report that UFA operated from when Dan Peterson began working at UFA. External consultancy has a far more objective feel and could empower messaging on many priority areas of UFA. Budget, staffing, operational needs, and administrative needs may be validated and emphasized in a way that complements our request for people and things required to deliver on our mission. The questions. First, would you support a policy that ensures set periodic reviews of UFA by external consultants? Relatedly, from your perspective, do you believe there is value in hiring an independent consultant to provide a study similar to what Sandy Fire Department just received? If so, what value do you think it could bring to UFA? Second, I understand that there are many aspects and items to consider, not to mention votes and support from the board. But is UFA in a position to entertain a possible merger with departments like Sandy City Fire Department if they make such a request? Is there such an opportunity for Sandy City FD and UFA here? What or if a request like that comes in from any other municipalities, how is it handled? Thank you.
Okay, another long one.
Multiple question, yeah.
Okay, so they broke it down into two questions, right? And I was part of the stakeholder involvement. The consulting firm called me. So Dusty Dern and I met with the consultants a number of months ago. And really what it was an opportunity for us to provide feedback based on our experience with our working relationship with Sandy. A lot of the things that we brought up were addressed in that study. The challenges with the dispatch centers being different, challenges with staffing, challenges with their specialty units. All of those things were items that we discussed with the consulting group. And really what that was trying to take it from an operational perspective and how we interact together and what the problems that may have had. The firm did a really good job putting that report together. As I mentioned, it's 170 plus pages. And I watched it on July 9th when they presented it to the council. So the question is really, is there value in us doing something similar? And I think there is. I think there's value in that. But I also think that as an organization today, we're in a really good place because of all the work that's taken place over the last 5 years. A lot of times when those external evaluators are brought in, it's because there's a major problem that needs to be addressed or fixed. And what I want to reiterate is that it comes down to what our elected officials want for their fire department. And I think that with our structure, obviously it's different than a city department. We have a 17-member board that's actively engaged, and they're engaged in the areas that we do right now, which are the standards of cover and the strategic plan. And a lot of this work that came out in this survey are things that we've addressed or highlighted in both of those documents. So I think a lot of that work that was done by the Sandy report is accomplished in what we're doing in those kind of standing 3-year rotating reports. Not everything, and obviously part of that is internal, but we do bring the external component in when we're talking about our strategic plan. So we do look for external feedback through that. I feel like, you know, the expense to an external consultant like that, I mean, that consultant group, I have no idea how much it costs, but I would guess something similar for UFA to do that would be around $100,000. And again, that's a guess, but it's I think I'm pretty close on that. And so, is it worth $100K every couple years to do that? Yeah, maybe if you're trying to address some major concerns. But in my opinion, I think we're moving in the right direction. We have a lot of structure in place that is working. And because our board is so involved and engaged, that I don't necessarily feel like they would support an external evaluation. And that's what it comes down to, is do they find the value in it? I'm not afraid, you know, of looking or having someone come look at us, because if it's going to make the UFA better, I'm all for it. But it would all come down to that budgeting and the prioritization of how to spend the money. So I think ultimately we're in a good spot. Like I said, you know, some of the things that were mentioned in that report were their aging fleet. A lot of their fire stations need to be rebuilt. Their specialty units are struggling because they don't have enough staff to meet those. And I think that from our, you know, we have all of our fire stations are seismically sound. We got that FEMA grant, took care of all of those. Our capital plan is amazing, and it's outlined for the next 15 years on how to replace all of our stuff. And we have, because of our size, amazing specialty units, and we're able to maintain and sustain those. So I think we're in a good spot. I think for now, I think we just keep on going with our strategic plan and standards cover. But if our board starts saying, hey, we needed this external evaluation to be done, let's do it. But we've got to find the money to do it. So the second part of the question is there an opportunity for Sandy to join UFA? And of course there is an opportunity there, but there is a very clear process in how that is done, and it's identified in our interlocal agreement, which, if you want to review it, and I encourage you to do that, it's on our website and the transparency tab. The section that you'd want to look at is section 18. It's the admission of new parties. So what that would how that would all happen is an elected official from Sandy would have to contact either me or Mayor Wickers as the board chair and say, hey, we're interested in looking into this. We can hold an initial meeting and talk through it and see how serious they are, but then we would have to take it to the full board to notify the full board that it was something we were looking into. From there, then a feasibility study needs to happen. So and again, I'm not going to go through all of it, but in the interlocal, it talks through what the feasibility study looks at and how that's conducted. And then we would come back to the board, and then they would make the decision if it's something it would be worth pursuing. But there's multiple steps in there that would need to happen. I can't go to Sandy City and say, hey, we'll be your fire department. I mean, that's just not how it works. It's clearly identified in the interlocal to prevent that from happening.
Right.
So there's a ton of steps involved. They would have to come reach out to us, either me or the chair, and then we'd have to take it from there. But okay. I do want to be clear that nobody from Sandy has reached out to me or Mayor Wickers, and so right now everything that's being talked about is a rumor based on this report.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right, Chief, you had a few things you wanted to update.
Yeah, there's been a number of things going on over the last couple months, and we kind of want to circle back to some of them. So I've got Riley and Kylie. That's fun. Here to address a couple of those items. So the first one I'm going to have Riley cover, which is the FPAT policy that got adopted and signed, last month?
Yeah, the last PAC meeting.
And when we met a couple of months ago, we kind of talked through what we were thinking, and now that policy is finalized, we promised we'd come back and revisit it and walk through the steps of it. So
yeah,
Riley's going to hit that.
Yep. So I can touch on this and where we kind of come. So this is policy 100-185, which is the FPAT. Last time we were kind of talking conceptually about what this policy potentially would look like, and now we have it. It's approved. It's out there. Definitely encourage everybody to read this so they understand it. The biggest thing that I really want to highlight is the 3 phases. There's a lot of interest in ensuring that if and when we implement something like this, we provided time and kind of advance notice so people could continue to prepare. And though we've been working through this for the last 5 to 6 years, if not longer, now that it's official and it's in place, we just want to make sure people understand exactly how it's going to be implemented. So this year, 2024, we'll still do the FPAT. Crews can go out there, get experience, get used to it, perfect the skill, right? Just make improvements where they see it's possible. And then starting in January 1, 2025 is what we're considering phase 1. So basically the year 2025 will be phase 1. Everyone will be required to go through the FPAT. And really it's, again, a personal assessment. The intent for 2025 is that you go through it and you really do pay attention to your time, where your strengths are, maybe where some of your weaknesses or areas for improvement are, and you start to focus on those. And now, ideally, but 2025. We're going to offer the FPAT twice a year. The springtime is going to be the required time, and the fall will be either a makeup or if you need to retest or like to retest, the fall will be the latest. But we want to make it available even between the spring and fall if somebody has interest in doing it. So again, 2025 is really just to get our feet under us and really start aiming hard towards the 10/30 time frame. In 2026, what we're going to call phase 2 is when we want everybody to again go through that and meet the time of 10:30. If they don't hit that in 10:30, we will ask them to do it again in the fall to gauge improvement. So again, 2024, the difference is we're just going through it to see where we're at. 2025, we do want you to pass it at 10:30, and if not, you will be required to retake it second session in the fall at 10:30. The one thing that we wanted to also articulate, make sure it's clear in both phases, is you do have access to the resources that the Health and Safety Committee are putting together. You have access to those now, but we really want to emphasize those who feel like they may need a little bit of additional help to start reaching out to anyone on the Health and Safety Committee or Chief Awesome for those resources. But in phase 1 and phase 2, we're really going to emphasize those who are above 10:30, take advantage of those. Phase 3, which will be 2027, will be the full implementation and basically, I guess, enforcement of the policy, where the expectation will be that people are meeting it at 10:30. That'll be a pass. You take it once at 10:30, you're good to go. If you fall in between 10:31 and 11, you'll be marked as needs improvement. That's when you work with your battalion chief, your captain, whoever, and you'll have time to make up that 30-second difference. Whether that's physical fitness, skill improvement, just getting more sets and reps to make sure you understand the technique. Whatever it is to get you down to that 10:30 mark, it's up to you to do that. And then you will be required to retake it in the fall at the latest, but pretty much at any time you're choosing. But we want to make sure you have a chance to take it when you're ready. Anybody who's at 11 and above, this is where it gets a little more specific, and we want people to definitely pay attention, is that would be deemed to fail. You would not pass the FPAT, and you would have 8 weeks to retest to see if you can get it underneath that 11-minute mark down into 10:30. After that, if you cannot do that, we will look at assigning individuals to a day position where they'll be out of operations, and that'll be a 90-day reassignment, where during that 90 days you'll be working specifically on improving whatever needs to be improved upon, whether it's fitness, skill, whatever we can offer you to hopefully help you get to that 10:30 mark. Following that 90-day, if you do not pass the FPAT in under 11, then that would basically fall into the essential job qualifications, and we would be applying basically the administrative leave with and without pay policy, where that has a whole different set of parameters and requirements, but employees who don't pass it, basically after all that time, would be put in that situation. Then we would, again, work administratively on how we want to proceed forward with that. So we don't want anybody to get there. We don't want anybody to be worried about it. And so that's why we're trying to make these resources available now and we're encouraging people, we're phasing this in, and we do want everybody to successfully pass this. You know, again, the intent is longevity, right? We want people to be fit and healthy during their careers, after their careers. This minimizes, you know, the potential for injury in a lot of instances. And, you know, we spent a lot of time validating this, working on it, the Health and Safety Committee, and a lot of us on and off the committee have been heavily involved and invested in finding this and finding something that works for our department. And we feel like this is a great test, so.
Yeah. And the other piece we want to talk about too is the candidate or the new hire
Yeah.
testing. We added that. We wanted to get this policy done so that we could put it in place for this new camp, getting ready to test.
Yep.
So for this next testing process, it's going to be a 13-minute cutoff, where before it was a pass or fail. So they're going to go through the same test. They have 13 minutes to complete it. It's not the same test. Excuse me. They're not on air.
Yeah.
But they have 13 minutes to complete it. But by the time they graduate camp, they have to pass it in 10:30. So the new recruits are actually going to be held to a little higher standard than our current employees for the next year or so, until we fully implement this. But that was something that I wanted to do, because once we, you know, we're bringing them in with a certain expectation. That 13 minutes down to 10:30 is a big gap, but we think that a lot of that gap will be overcome by familiarization of the props and how to do it. So, but this will be the first year we're going to implement that. We'll see how it goes, and I'm hoping that that will prevent us from losing candidates for the first week or so of camp because of physical issues.
Yeah, we think that'll work, and having seen it in action and seen people who don't have experience versus who do, there definitely is a marked improvement just with familiarity. So we think it's achievable.
Well, this is, I think, a good thing, and you've got 3 years now before full implementation. We have resources available. Reach out to Chief Pilgrim or Embrit.
Correct.
To figure out how to use those if you're available now or want those resources now. It's policy 100-185 if you want to review it, but it's out. Okay. Thank you. Next thing we'll go to you, Kylie, with the special hire. So we added a second recruit camp as part of the budget process. So we added a bunch of money in there to put a second camp on, and this camp was meant for our current seasonal or wildland or part-time employees rather. So wildland and part-time EMS. We drafted a policy to see how that would work, and in that policy there were some restrictions on hours and time, right? Because the intent of that was we're vetting the employee through their time as a part-time employee, and so we wanted to make sure they had at least a year on. So a year of wildland or a season of wildland, and then at least 750 hours as a part-time EMS.
Right.
Doing it that way kind of limited the number of people we were going to get. So we ended up with
We're looking about probably 11.
probably 11. Okay, so that's not a full camp.
No.
And so what was brought up in the firefighter hiring meeting was, can we try to add some more people to that? And we've figured out a way to do that. So let's have you talk through that.
So basically what will happen, we're going to be doing the physical agility test and the oral board interviews August 12th through the 16th. And on the 16th, that evening, we're going to be banding all of those candidates. In looking at our timeline, we felt that we could probably take some of those who are in our A band and who have scored the highest, that we could possibly put 5 of those through the background, the psych, drug screen, and their physical, and get them into this new hire camp, the special hiring camp that will take place middle of October. We couldn't really do more than that just based on the timeline. We needed about 8 weeks, and feel like trying to get at least 5 through would be beneficial and kind of fast track those in. But like I said, they are going to be those who are in the A band, and then based on their score, the score at the highest. So,
So
there's really
we're
not
targeting
a lot
5 more
of,
people that, and what we had talked about too is if you call those 5 people and they say, I can't start till
Yeah.
February, then we'll take the next 5.
Yep, we'll just kind of work down that list.
Work down.
Um,
Okay. So we're hoping to get 15 to 16 in the fall camp.
Yep,
Okay,
yeah.
good. And then a full camp in the spring.
And then that's an additional 5 people that we can put into that
We can add more in.
spring
Yep.
camp.
Okay, good.
So just more people.
So this is a little outside of the normal process, right? We're trying to add more to limit that
Yep.
vacancy burden. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then next year, look at if this is something we do every year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing, this back to Riley now, is the uniform vendor updates. So I've had a lot of people talking. This has been, it seems like we did the RFP a year ago maybe, right?
Feels like it, yeah, just about.
You've been kind of dealing with the challenges of bringing these new vendors on and how it's impacted. You know more about screen printing now than you probably ever wanted to know.
Oh, for sure.
But there are some complications there, and
Yeah.
you've been working through that with the uniform committee, so I want to just give you an opportunity to update.
I'll try to keep it high level and brief because there is a lot of detail and work that has gone into this. First of all, I do need to thank the uniform committee and Captain Birmingham. He's been working tirelessly actually to make this happen. And we're super aware of the challenges and frustrations people have with our current provider. We work with SCAGs on a regular basis. I mean, weekly times we're in there talking to them. And I mean, they're choosing to run their business the way they want to run it, and it may not be the best for us. It's frustrating at times. And recently, the reason why this has kind of taken so long is we've pretty much exhausted all efforts on negotiating 511 T-shirts of all things. Unbeknownst to us, when we started this process, 511 actually has a regional dealer contract with SCAGs. And you walk in there, they sell tons of 511 products, right? Not just our blue T-shirts, but law enforcement, they have a huge market on that. And 511 really appreciates the relationship they have with SCAGs and, again, business decisions on their ends. But with this regional contract, that excludes anybody else from selling 511 that does business with us, basically, other than SCAGs. We've met with 511, literally almost to the top. We met with their regional sales guy and regional manager, and 511 has no interest in leaving SCAGs or changing that agreement. They definitely don't want to lose us as a customer, but on the other hand, they do a lot of business. So we've worked with them for months to try to make some kind of wiggle room or some kind of change, and it just wasn't happening. So to move to Galls and to move to Ellen Curtis and to have them provide our T-shirts, we had to consider changing shirts, which we've looked at several different types, and the decision was made, recommended through the uniform committee, approved by command staff. We had a few other crews and people look at them, is to move away from 511 and go to First Tactical. And the reason why this took some time is we also take these decisions seriously, right? These aren't lightly taken, like the jacket, the favorite topic of the fire department for the last 20 years, right? The outerwear, that was a big deal, and it's been a pain, and it's difficult, and we don't like it, and it costs money. There's a lot of things that create problems, and we're super aware of that. We're very sensitive to that stuff. But to keep moving forward, we sometimes just have to make these decisions that are in the best interest of us as an organization, that we don't always understand the why behind it. And the real why in this one is this 511 contract just proved to be an insurmountable obstacle that we just could not work through. So First Tactical is actually a spin-off of 511. The shirts are near identical. They're a little bit less expensive, so by a few dollars, not by much there. They're widely available. They actually have more size options, especially for women. They're tailored towards women. They have different sizes, so that's something I think is going to be a huge win. For 511, we're struggling to get right size shirts for people. And all the vendors can carry them. So it can go from Galls, SCAGs is already carrying them for other departments. Then Ellen Curtis is able to do that. So now that we've made that decision, all 3 vendors have sent shirts out to be printed. That's probably about a 4 to 6 week time frame before those shirts become available. In the meantime, SCAG still has 511 inventory. Our instruction or request of them is to print those. So when we made the decision to go to RFP, SCAGs went to like 50% production. They were worried about where we were going to go. They didn't want to be left holding the bag of inventory, so they actually pulled way back. And since then, they have not really been willing to restore what they were doing, even though we've talked to them and we've asked them. But just as a business decision with us going other places, they did not want to have a lot on hand, right, that had UFA stuff on it. So they made a business decision, and unfortunately that's impacted our ability to walk in there and get shirts. I don't know, it's worse than it was before, but it's not great. So where we're at now is Skaggs will print those, they'll put them on the shelf, but their concern was having the inventory that they do have. So to help our employees and help Skaggs, we're going to implement it. Probably it'll be in the uniform policy. We're actually looking at almost a 2-year sunset. So people can buy these shirts, they can wear 511, they can start wearing First Tactical. They look close enough that you're really not going to notice a difference. And probably by July 1 of 2026-ish, we'll probably move all over to First Tactical. That includes the quarter zips, long sleeve shirts, everything. But this, we feel, is going to provide more options, more shirts on the shelf, hopefully. And that's a big thing that we've decided to do. The other thing that we learned in this process, as Chief mentioned, is screen printing. And our t-shirt has like a 7-step process. And I've talked to a lot of people, there's a lot of opinions out there on how we can do this, but our shirt's actually pretty complicated. So it takes time to print our shirts, especially when you add the designation and the rank. And so one thing that they've said will make it easier is to move the rank and designation opposite of the chest logo, because then you can walk in the store that takes less time to line them up, they can print them out, and we can get shirts quicker. So you're going to hopefully walk into all these vendors, little Skaggs and Ellen Curtis, and they can screen print on site, and it'll be quick. And again, I know there's going to be a lot of skepticism that is going to work, because Skaggs at this point hasn't worked great. So, and then Galls will have an online storefront where you order it and it'll be ready to go. So that's a win. The other thing we're looking at doing, it, or we've considered and we've chosen to do, is taking the embroidery out the back of the quarter zip. 2 reasons why. Number one, it takes a lot of time and effort to embroider the quarter zip, and it almost doubles the price. So by removing the embroidery, which I know there's a lot of interest and a lot of people like that, it actually drops the price by almost 40%. And so we feel like to get more things on the shelf, which is the more common concern, is to change that piece. So those are the biggest changes that we've seen and made over the last couple weeks. With the vendors, I'm working with Captain Birmingham now. Skaggs should be ready to go with this stuff. We'll make a stop in there once a week and see how they're doing. Ellen Curtis is ready to supply uniform items as far as the t-shirt goes as soon as their shipment shows up. So they were supposed to go out to print, I believe, last week or this week. They do have our normal station uniforms, they have our patches, they have our specs. So you can walk in there today and get your Class P uniform and all that stuff. And then Galls, we're just getting their website finalized, and that should be launched. So I'm working with Captain Birmingham. We should have dates on those. We'll have a memo coming out here pretty soon. It has the details and basically step-by-step instructions for each vendor on how to do this. So I just want to personally express my appreciation for the patience. This has taken a long time. It's been way more challenging than I expected it to be. But we feel like once we get these things up and running, we'll hopefully see less frustration in getting our stuff, but only time will tell. So,
The direction that I've given to you and the uniform committee is uniform, professional, and accessibility, right?
yeah.
And I think that with these couple of changes, you're going to meet that target. But the 2-year window of changing the T-shirt over, I think, is really smart, because that would allow Skaggs to print the shirts they have, knowing that we're going to purchase them for the next 2 years. You wear a shirt out and then have to buy new ones, and you just start buying the new brand.
Yeah.
So it won't be too much of a financial impact, but
Yeah, and
hopefully they're a little easier to get.
Yeah, my understanding is they have about 500 shirts on hand that they were unsure what to do with because of this change, right? And I don't blame them at all. I mean, we're a big customer, and they were our only provider. And so for them, this is a change, right? And so they're protecting their interests, and it's frustrating as that can be. I definitely understand their position, and we'll keep working with them even once these are all in place, because they are local and they're right next door. And I mean, despite that, they've been very helpful on a lot of other things. And we do get a lot of stuff from Skaggs that we can't get other places. Tailoring, the patches, all that, I mean, that's at no cost. And I've talked to people who've done this on their own, and they're paying upwards of $90 to have uniforms tailored. So it's hard, and some people can walk into Skaggs and have an amazing experience, Other people wait 3 weeks to get a T-shirt, and it's just all over the place, and it's really hard to hone it in, and it's up to them. It's not up to us, and that's been the biggest challenge. Is we can't force them to do anything. So,
Okay. That's what I wanted to hit. I will say next month we're going to bring Wade in, Captain Green, and talk about the specialty programs and what that looks like with the budget, allowing an administrative assistant in that special ops program. We're going to bring in Greensides for a fleet update and talk about some of the new apparatus that we're getting in and expecting to get in. And he just did a quarterly update. There's a lot of quarterly updates that came out last week. We're working on getting those on the QR code.
Yep.
So those will be there for your benefit. But that's all I have.
Just a reminder too, we've got the picnic coming up September 6th at Magnet Copper Park. And then you'll also see a solicitation for award nominations. It's almost that time of year, so be thinking about the great work that's been done this last year. For Chief, I'm Niall Easton. That's been Questions for the Chief for July. We'll see you next month.